Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our reading of Tabitha's Travels. We are on week 3, the Thursday reading. We're following Tabitha as she looks for her father in the temple, in Jerusalem, with the priest Zechariah. And she's in the midst of talking to a Roman centurion who thinks he may know something about her father's whereabouts. If you have your Advent candles with you, you can light the 2 violet candles and the pink joy candle. Tabitha stared into the eyes of the Roman centurion, afraid to hear the words he might speak. She saw that they were cold eyes, the eyes of a man familiar with killing. But she also saw the smallest touch of compassion. It was this compassion that finally prompted her to ask the question, "What of my father?" The Roman's expression did not change, but when he spoke, it was in a low voice, as if he didn't want his soldiers to hear. "He was held here these last several days," he said, "and was to be executed this morning. But his claim of being a citizen worried my commander, so he sent your father to Herodium to be judged by a Roman officer named Coponius." Tabitha's heart leapt at the news that her father was still alive. Then she saw the Roman's forehead wrinkle as if worried. He looked about to make sure no one could hear, then said, "Emperor Augustus has heard rumors that King Herod has become insane and sent Coponius here to investigate. Since he was sent by Rome, Coponius will judge your father, and he will judge him fairly, but you must hurry." The centurion added, "If you have proof of his citizenship, you must get it to Herodium by morning, or your father will be executed." Now Tabitha's heart sank, wondering how in all of Palestine she would do such a thing. Suddenly the Roman stood to his feet. "Release the priest," he commanded, "and let these 2 go their way." The soldiers surrounding Zechariah stepped back into line. A physician had arrived by now and was tending to the wounded man. "A fine job you did stopping the bleeding," he said to Tabitha. "You will make a good midwife." "Hurry now," the centurion said. Then he leaned down and whispered in her ear, "And remember, from this day, that not all Romans are evil." Tabitha smiled at the soldier, but he did not smile back. He must not show any weakness to his men, she decided. Then she ran down the steps, grabbed Zechariah by the hand, and yelled, "Come on!" Running up the street, the old priest yelled to her, "Where are we going?" "To Herodium," Tabitha answered. Zechariah skidded to a stop, with Tabitha still tugging on his hand. "Why are you stopping?" she cried, pulling now with both hands. "We must hurry." "Because, child," Zechariah said patiently, "you are going the wrong way." An hour later, Tabitha and her priest protector were on the south road out of Jerusalem. After listening to Tabitha's report of the centurion's words, Zechariah had enlisted the help of Obadiah, one of his priest friends, sending the man to Bethlehem to fetch the needed parchment. He and Tabitha would head straight to Herodium. Perhaps the plea of a daughter would stay the executioner's hand long enough for Obadiah to bring the evidence. "How far is it?" "The sun will be setting when we arrive," Zechariah answered. Then he added, "It is not far." They continued walking at a quick pace, passing many other travelers along the way. The sun was headed down, and Tabitha thought they must be getting close. Suddenly, Zechariah let out a squeal and began hopping on one foot. "What is it?" Tabitha asked. "A scorpion?" "No, no such trouble," Zechariah said. He sat on a rock and pulled his injured foot up on his knee. "Just a thorn," he said. He pulled the sticker from his foot and winced, then began rubbing his troubled sole. I must rest for a while," he said. "Then we will continue." Tabitha was frustrated at the delay, but said nothing except, "I shall search this hillside for some berries while you rest." As Zechariah continued rubbing his foot, Tabitha climbed the hill behind him, taking in the view. Off in the distance, another hour's walk by her judgment, she saw a palace on a hill. "That must be Herodium," she thought. "How beautiful!" She continued gazing at the sight until, from the other side of the hill, she heard a soft cry. Leaving Herodium behind, she crested the hill to see a man, a woman, and a donkey in a small hollow. The woman was on the ground, and appeared to be pregnant and in pain. "May I be of help?" Tabitha cried as she ran down to the couple. The man looked up. "My wife is soon to give birth, and is weary from travel." Tabitha stared at the woman and thought she looked a lot like an angel must look. She was breathing quickly, and her lips were cracked and dry. "Would you care for a sip of water?" Tabitha asked. "That is most kind," the woman answered. "Our skin of water ran out earlier this afternoon, and there have been no more streams or wells." Without a word, Tabitha pulled her own water skin out of her travel bag. She handed it to the man, who helped his wife take a long drink. When she was finished, the woman looked much cooler and breathed more comfortably. "Your kindness speaks well of your father," the woman said. At the word father, Tabitha suddenly remembered her quest. "Forgive me," she sputtered, "but I must leave you now. Is there any other need you have?" "No, thank you, child," the man said. "Your kindness has been a great help already." Tabitha ran back up the hill, then down the other side to where Zechariah was standing. "I thought you had gone on without me," he said. "Forgive me," Tabitha replied as they began walking again. "I found a woman in need and shared my water with her." Zechariah shook his head in wonder. "I believe you could find a way to help Decha himself." Tabitha just shrugged. "Perhaps Jehovah has found a job in my life." "For my life," she said. A short time later, they turned a bend in the road and found themselves at the foot of the hill on which rested the palace of Herodium. Tabitha gawked as she looked straight up, wondering how anyone could build such a towering fortress on top of a hill. "And a man-made hill at that," Zechariah said when she voiced her wonder. 10,000 slaves worked 7 years to build this mountain so that Herod could have his palace." The thought of Jews being enslaved for such work sickened Tabitha, and suddenly the palace didn't look quite so beautiful. At the base of the hill of Herodium sat the town of Herodium, and it was here that Zechariah and Tabitha finally found some dinner at an inn. As she devoured the pasty mixture of fish and oats, Tabitha asked her guardian, "Why do men make slaves of other men?" Tabitha looked up from his own bowl and stared for a moment. "Because they do not understand that there can only be one God over men. They think it is important to be gods themselves." "Why does Jehovah allow such things to happen?" "He cannot stop us if we are to have the choice to be good or to be evil," Zechariah said, taking a bite of bread. All he can promise is to use even the worst of situations for our good. Tabitha nodded, then scooped up the last dollop of paste. May I have more? She asked. Zechariah laughed. You certainly have the appetite of a boy, he said. He took her bowl, got up from the table, and worked his way through the crowded inn to the cooking area. He handed the innkeeper a small coin, and in return received another bowl of the gruel. Holding the bowl up high so as to not spill it, he worked his way back to the table. But then he stopped dead in his tracks. Tabitha was gone. That's the end of our reading today. Thinking about what Tabitha did, we remember what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 25. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me in. That's what Tabitha was like in this chapter. Compassionate is a word we often use to describe Jesus. We could probably use it to describe the character of Tabitha as well. Is it a word others would use to describe you? Being compassionate toward others, helping others in need, is part of what it means to love. It doesn't call on us to judge them for their situation. It doesn't give us the choice to care only for people we like. It's not something we can do only when it's convenient for us. It's a command, part of the command Jesus gave to love your neighbor as yourself. To be compassionate means much more than to feel sorry for someone. It means having a strong desire and acting on that desire to help them, even at the expense of our own comfort. I tell you the truth, Jesus said. Whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. When we give a sip of water to one of God's children who is thirsty, it's as if we are giving it to Jesus himself. Imagine that.